So, you're tuned in. You are tuned in to KFUG here in Crescent City, California, 101.1 FM on your radio dial or streaming dial, if there's such a thing. Hello. This is a wonderful day on this lovely coastal village of Crescent City, California, and the varied regions beyond, including all of those that are streaming this live radio program on KFUG. You're listening to Jacques Cousteau. Well, at least the Jacques part is correct. My last name is Kepner, but that's close enough. Jacques Talks is the name of this broadcast, and no, we will not be discussing sports and other Jacques-related topics, at least not at this time. This will be an hour-long, conversation-driven show where every Wednesday between the hours of 1 and 2, you will get to hear some very interesting local folks discussing topics and issues of our time and ones that make this area such an interesting place. Speaking of which, if you are at all interested in becoming involved with your local community radio station, I implore you to begin that journey by simply tuning in, streaming, or by going to kfugradio.org and check us out. Do you have an interesting idea for a show that could be broadcast live or recorded at the studio? Would you like to be a, quote, disc jockey? Or would you like to get involved with a great non-profit group that benefits this community tremendously? If so, let us know. Now, today on Jacques Talk, we will venture down the path of grief and grieving and talk about good grief, if there is actually such a thing. I've had several people respond to, oh, great, I can't wait to tune in, man. I'm just going to be like super down. Whoa, talking about grief and grieving. Whoa, I mean, what a bummer, man. So they got a valid point there, that there is a certain amount of bummerism in there. People get bummed out talking about death, grieving, loss. And but it's something that's human. It's something that pretty much every human being on this earth will eventually, at one point, go through the grieving and loss part of life. Many of us here are retirees. We're in the autumn of our lives. We're in the last chapters of our books of our lives. And so we may lose a mate. We may, our parents, even pets, all these things, anything temporal will go away, as we know. We are mortal after all. And I was spared grief for a long, long time. Where do I start? Let me briefly tell my story. I evolved over time from a nightmare beginning to where I am at today. Primarily, I was a better man because of my partner's untimely and tragic end. You see, I'm getting caught up with this again. Here we go. I lost my late wife tragically 7 years ago, and I have trouble even recalling those dark days after she died. She died in a Midwestern, strange, distant ICU room in a Midwestern hospital. And with her demise, my own life ended in remorse, regret, and despair. I have never felt more alone and unable to comprehend my loss. I've never felt more unraveled. And to tell you the truth, absolutely nothing mattered to me at that time. So what did I do? I divested myself of stuff that I had spent a lifetime collecting and carrying around. For me, it was the only logical step to take in a world that appeared like a nightmare. It was truly like a nightmare, and I couldn't pull out of it. My cloudy reasoning was this: if I couldn't regain the most valuable asset, which was her, why would I want all this superfluous crap and baggage that had so much less value? So again, I divested. I sold what I could, gave away lots, and literally burned the rest. Grief itself it's almost can be compared to a club. If you've gone through that club and are a member of it, then good. You have survived it. You know exactly what I mean if you've been through it. It could come on fast and strong with little or no warnings, just like it came on for me for 10 short days after my partner stepped on a piece of glass at a beach in South Carolina. Sepsis set in, blood poisoning, and it took over. And I saw firsthand a gruesome, untimely death. Or grief can come on much more sudden, as in a fire or an accident. Some of those horrific stories you have heard about, where people are alive one moment and dead the next. There are many in grief's club also known to have slow, agonizing descent into death with disease. Now here I am getting choked up, and I'm going to pull back here and say, 7 years, I'm over it. I am over it. I have read the book of grief. I put that book up on a shelf of remembrance and reverence and love. But it's a book that I do not wish ever to reread again. It'll always hold a vaulted and a special place on my bookshelf of life. But it's a book that I don't want to reread. And so I think after 7 years, come on, it's over, right? 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was rough. 6 years ago, I was crying all the time at the drop of a hat. And here I get choked up on it still to this day. Why do we human beings grieve so badly and for years when someone we love passes? How is my grief with the loss of my partner compared to the tragic news of, let's say, a mass shooting? We hear about it and we go, oh my God, those poor children or whatnot. We're so sorry. But then we just move on as if it never happened and have our dinner that night. What's the difference there? The grief to us with the death of a loved one is so powerful because it snips the bond like an umbilical cord between living and death, between our life and their life. I have so much more to talk about, and we will over the next 50 minutes or so. But I want to introduce a good friend of mine, lady friend of mine, Jenna, in the audience here today. And she, like myself, went through a process of grieving when her late husband Tom passed. Welcome, Jenna.
Hey, Jacques.
How are you?
Good to be here.
Yeah. There's a good smile. I'm kind of going down that road of. I'm going to blow my nose.
It's a mixed bag, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's so emotional still. And I told myself when I was, writing this and planning this show out, it's okay. I'll just tell it. But once I started telling it, you see what happened. I mean, the emotion comes in so strong of loss
That's part of the grieving.
It's part of the grieving.
Still.
So my late wife passed 7 years ago. How long ago did Tom die?
16 years ago.
16 years ago. So you're about double the time that...
Yeah.
And you still go through that protracted thought, thinking of him every day? Or are you at a point where you don't have to dwell on thinking about...
I don't dwell on the death, but to be honest, he's a part of me. He's part of the fabric of who I am, so I'm always with him. I've moved on in my life. I'm surviving and I'm flourishing, but he was a huge part of my life and the father to my children.
Really?
So...
Yeah, he's your dad's. He's the dad to your children.
Right.
You know, what is it, Jenna? I mean, we should know better that when someone we love dies, they have a red light. They came to a red light and their life ended. Mm-hmm. Does that supposed to mean that we have to go through a red light too? No. I think our loved ones that are gone, they would have never said, you stop too when I die. They're saying, no, you got a green light of life.
Right.
Go for it. Keep going. Keep living. Do it.
I think so.
But then we get kind of mired down in this.
I did. I was mired down for 12 years.
Wow.
And a lot of that was just the aftermath, raising two small children alone, cleaning up the financial, the property loss, just one loss after another, and the loss of our dream.
Everything dissipated.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
everything just goes away.
You're so busy just trying to hold up the world, in my case, other lives, that the grieving takes on a different form, for me anyway. And it took a lot longer because there was so much devastation.
Wow. You've showed me pictures of Tom. Good-looking guy, healthy, robust. And suddenly that everyday part of your life is gone. Never to return except through the memories, except through recalling, telling
I think
stories.
What made it harder for me was that he was very young. He was 40. He was 43 when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and we had a 2 and a 4-year-old, and a new business that was going gangbusters. And a diagnosis like that, just from the very start, is pretty devastating, to say the least. And out of the blue, somebody that's healthy, great immune system, and then just to be struck, really blindsided both of us.
Yeah, I know. There's so many stories. As we get older, as we enter this autumn of our lives, this is going to happen more often. And the people that I have surrounded myself with in the past 3, 4, 5 years have been ones that have suffered from loss, tragic loss. And mainly the gals that I know, a couple of ladies in Brookings that know exactly who they are and what kind of loss they went through in all various stages. 1 year out, 3 years out. I still to this day go to grieving classes. I've gone to every grieving course there is. I mean, secular, religious, you call it, you name it. I've been there. Grief share, churches, anybody who wants to speak, I used to go. And when I'd hear somebody just lost someone, like literally weeks before, and we're just a ball of just a mess, unraveled, completely unraveled, I would say you're in the prologue of the book of grief.
Right.
You have a long way to go. It doesn't matter how much you grieve. It's just that you are grieving. And a Hindu man 4 years ago finally got my head on straight when he said, you Americans, you guys hide from death. You clap your hands over your ears and you run away and you say, no, I don't want to hear it. Don't keep that talk away from me. Cover the children's head. Don't. So we deny. And then when it hits, inevitably, all of us, we collapse. As if we had no precursor that we would be in such bad shape because we deny it. I think it can be somewhat of a cultural thing, but human loss is the same, no matter where or what we are. And with Tom, 16 years ago, and I'm sure there's people listening here who lost their spouse 25 years ago. And it's just an ongoing book of life and death. Oh, you're putting your glasses on there. Okay, now what do you got? Excuse me. When I usually go to this class, I'll usually tell people it's like the book. We start at the first chapter and then we progress. And then when you finish that book of grief, you put it on the shelf. But we are still into that realm of loss that no one that has not experienced can really tell you what it's like. I'm going to extend that to pets. I know some people that never had children, and when their dog or cat died, they lost it. It was true grief.
Oh, yeah. True
grief there, especially Americans. We're dog and cat fanatics. And so you will experience it. We will all experience the loss of a loved one in our life. That's part of the travails of being a human being. And if we can't get our heads around it, if we can't move on after death, then where are we as individuals? Have we grown by their death? Are you a better person because of Tom's death? I know it sounds weird, but did you become more humble? Did you become more introspective?
I've definitely grown and experienced things I never would have experienced if he had lived. I think I am better.
Yeah, I've always said that I have been saying this for years. I'm a better man because of her demise, because of her death, because it made me look at life with a different light, that we had better live our lives while we have the life within us. We'd better put the car of our vehicle of living into drive and go down the highway, because eventually it's going to run out of gas and it will stop. There is, for many of you have heard of the Kubler-Ross model of the stages of grief, named after the doctors, that categorize this feeling of grief. And I'm going to go through them. There's, I think, there's about 5 of them. So I'm going to go down a list. I just want you to comment on each one. So these are a series of emotional stages that most people generally go through upon losing a loved one. The first one is denial. So denial, okay, I didn't quite get that. So wait a minute, denial that they're not dead? What does that mean to you? Denial? They didn't die?
Well, for me, I felt a death when he was diagnosed because I knew what was coming. And there was no denying that he had a terminal diagnosis. He had a 0.01% chance of living.
Wow.
And I had lost other relatives from the same disease. But then when he died, it was so graphically traumatic in the way that it happened. There was no denying it, especially when his body is right there.
Yeah.
So I don't really feel like I went through denial.
Okay, the next one, yeah, I think I did, because I would say, she's not dead. You're still alive. I'm going to come home and it's going to be like a bad dream that I had, and I'm going to walk in the door and you're going to be waiting there for me. I kind of went through that. The second stage is anger. Now, I could say I went through anger too. Gosh darn you, why did you leave me? Why was I so happy and now I'm so horribly sad? What the heck? I would scream at the universe. And I was mad and angry. What in the frick is going on? How and why could you possibly have taken away such a great treasure in my life and burned it? Burned it. Literally. Did you go through any of that similar stages?
For years. I was angry for years. I didn't understand, after working 20 years for the American dream, how it could have all just burnt to the ground. And how, the thing I really couldn't understand is how a father could be taken away from his children that needed him. That was the biggest thing I couldn't rationalize. And, you know, he was a great man and a great father, and it didn't make sense to me. And I was really angry. And took me a long time to get past that piece.
Yeah.
But also, the thing I realized later is that if you're always looking in the rearview mirror about what you've lost, you're going to be angry because you're not looking forward and you're not looking at what you still have.
Wow. Great
And
analogy.
that was one of the biggest things I learned and one of the biggest mistakes that I made was not looking what was still there. I had 2 great children. I had a life. I was healthy, at least at that moment. But I was just so focused on what I had lost because it was such a great loss to all of us. So that's one of the big lessons that I learned from all of it.
Yeah. You know, it's a downer. I'm sure some of you people out there that are listening to this be going, oh, come on, let's get an uplifting subject there, Jacques. Let's talk a little bit upbeat. We will. But I just think I've been looking forward to this. I was telling Paul since I started this show 5 weeks ago that one of the subjects definitely would be grief and grieving. Because it's so integral. And again, in Crescent City, Brookings, these are retiree. These are
Right.
mainly retirees living here. And we're going to be faced with death or so many. I know so many widows and widowers. I know so many of them.
There's a
I
lot.
myself, you're one. Again, we are all getting to that age where we are going to be seeing a lot more of it too. So the more we're prepared, the more we're able to deal with the head-on accident coming our way with these people's death and demise, the better we could become, hopefully spring out of it. The third characteristic or stage of the Kubler-Ross model of grief is, this is a weird one, I thought, bargaining. And I thought, bargaining? I don't remember bargaining about anything. I thought, I said, wow, oh, thank you, man. Ralph just brings in some cookies. Cookies and stuff, and he puts down a roll of, is that salmon? Yeah, I can't eat it now, and then he brings in some toilet paper for me to blow my nose, which I really needed. Thank you, Ralph. And look at this guy, he's such a gentleman. So the bargaining one, okay, no, hold on. Okay, hold on. Let me unroll this roll. It's a brand new roller. Okay, no, I'm gonna go across the room here for a second. There you go. You heard it here first. Blowing my nose. That is much greatly relieved because did you know there's 2 types of tears? There's tears of joy and there's tears of sorrow, and they're chemically different from one another.
I didn't know that.
They're chemically different. I used to know what difference there was. The doctor out there would tell me what they are, but they're composed of a different chemical, one that is secreted only when in sorrow and anxiety and despair, and one that is the joy when you see a baby or you see God or whatever, you're all happy.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I remember crying so much for so long that I finally thought, I don't have any more tears left. And I didn't cry for years. And it's just been in the last few years that I've started to cry again.
Yeah.
I think I just used them up.
You know, I would no way was when I was preparing the show, I wasn't going to cry. I'm over it. 7 years out. It's done. Like I said, I put that book up on the shelf. Okay. And here it is. It just gushed out
It's
of me.
important for it to come out.
I guess it is. Returning to that thing, bargaining, number 3 of the 5.
Yeah.
That's a weird one. And so I looked it up, and I read about this. It says, when one asks a higher power, the divine or God, to bring back what you have lost, possibly or potentially in exchange for something, that's what that bargaining is. And you mentioned earlier, did you tell us about your bargaining? What did you say to God?
Well, when he was diagnosed terminally, I bargained with God very directly. I really was just feeling like I would much rather give my life in exchange for his. And I asked for that. Of course, I didn't get it, but I thought that would be a great remedy if somebody had to go. And I figured he would be a lot better at the aftermath than I would be. When he died, I did not bargain because it was a protracted death and in my face, and I had some time to prepare for it, so there really wasn't any bargaining because it was done. And it was 7 years. He was alive 7 years. I took care of him for 7 years after he was diagnosed. So it was a process.
Yeah. It's a process that we are all going to go through, all of us at one point or another. And here's an aspect of it. It's not the deceased that are feeling all this. They're gone. It's the living that leave behind, right?
Right.
And if we just understand the gyrations of this kind of a movement of this dance of death that all of us will deal with, and I think we'll be better. I think we'll be better off. The fourth stage of the Kubler-Ross model of grief is depression. And this one I could speak to directly. I had never been a depressed person. I had been upbeat all my life, thought it was cool. And I got so depressed, not just years later. I mean, I'm talking about 3 or 4 years later. The sun didn't turn me on anymore when it rose over the mountain. Mm-hmm. When I look at it, the moon wasn't interesting to me as it rose above the forest hills. Nothing seemed to interest me. So I would turn to medicine. I said, doctor, give me some antidepressant pills or whatever, which is, I think, the most prescribed thing in the United States today amongst Americans. I think we really medicate on anxiety and depression. And it worked for me for a while. Yeah, it kind of brought back a little light. But was a depression for you just temporal, or was it still to this day? Is it still a kind of
I don't feel like I have depression now, but I did have depression then. 5 years after he died, a doctor said to me, you are profoundly grieving. And she thought I was in trouble. And I was. And I was put on medication, and the doctor said, if you don't do this, you will die. You will get a form of cancer of some kind or something because you're under way too much stress and way too much pressure. So I went on for a course, and it helped. It saved my life. Yeah. Actually, I know a woman who had a similar circumstance, and she didn't know about medication, and she didn't do it, and she ended up with breast cancer and almost died after her husband died.
Wow.
And so it really, when they first told me, you have to do this or you'll die, I kind of thought, really? But I did it, and I think it did save my life, actually.
I got to say so too, and I really believe this to be true. I think if we bring so much angst and anxiety and stress in our lives, it will take its toll in a form of disease. Give you cancer, it'll eat you up. The Hindus have been saying this for years and years. They say, take a person that's constantly fretting and worried, they're not on this earth too long, because it's gonna knock them down and out. Unbelievably, we've already gone way past the point of halfway on this program, so I need to stop right here. And thank you for all tuning in to Jacques Talks. And I'm Jacques Kepner. I'll be your host for this remainder of the hour with my guest, Jenna. And the reason you are hearing this conversation is because I am a part of kfug.com, the radio. KFUGradio.org, pardon. Pardon. Right here in Crescent City, California and beyond. Folks, I had an idea several months ago to get back into the broadcaster's booth, and I pitched the show to my esteemed colleague Paul Kurtz, affectionately known as the station manager, and the man with that coolest voice in broadcasting. But what I'm getting at is this. If I can do it, then you may very well be able to get into broadcasting too. If you have an idea for a show, PITP, pitch it to Paul. I assure you that although Paul is very busy, he's a good guy and he's dedicated to the station, and he is approachable. He does not bite except on his days off. On a similar note, KFUG is on your radio right now because of those folks like you who have donated to this homespun local community radio station like KFUG. I really thank all of you. My niece Kelly was so cute. I was down in the Bay Area for a wedding this weekend, a great Chinese wedding in San Francisco, and she listened to my show a couple of weeks ago, and she was so impressed that she called Paul and she says, "I'm going to donate to this KFUG. This is great." And my uncle Jimmy Jack he's gonna. I was so impressed. It was so much fun. So thank you, Kelly. That was a great sustaining membership pledge that she gave to this station, and you can too. If it's $5 a month, whatever you can afford, give what you can, and it helps us pay the bills and sustains this fantastic community voice radio station with no commercials. You don't have to put up with that crapola. And Redwood Voices is phenomenal. It hires and pays these young adults to get in there and learn an incredible trade in broadcasting. So thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. All right, we're going to get back to the fifth and last of the Kubler stages of grief. And let me pull back here and get my notes up. And that is the Kubler. Here it is. The last one is acceptance. So we got through that bargaining one. That was weird. I don't think I ever said, if you bring back her, I'll walk on fire or something. I don't know what I don't think I bargained too much, but accordingly, depression was definitely it. Okay, the last one is acceptance. And I think this is where you and I, and so many of my friends in Brookings and beyond, and Crescent City here, that I have so many friends. I think we're all at that stage right now where we've accepted it. We've gone on.
Yes.
Some of us have found another partner. Some of us have just finally bit the bullet and said, "There's okay. It's part of life. Death is part of life, and we accept it. We're older now. We get it." Are you in that acceptance stage? I mean, you accept it. I mean, you have to, right? We all have to.
I don't think you have to. I think it's a choice. I accept it. I kind of feel like acceptance is also part of, once you do that, then it's a matter of rebuilding your life or recreating your life. Kind of like the phoenix rising from the ash is the way I think of myself.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, true. Good analogy there. Well, we have gone through the 5 stages, that of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, but how it fits into our lives and how it goes into how it fits into this thing called life is individual. None of us have the same route that others will have in this lesson of life through death. I've been preparing this road. I have so much to say. There's so many things that I needed to talk about on this before the show, and one of them is a great, funny story about a farmer I met, and regarding the stuff that I used to carry around, stuff that all of a sudden left no more importance in my life. It was just stuff. You cannot take it with you. And the story goes like this. This farmer in Missouri watched me moving into a house and watched my crew take it out. I was paying these guys to come in the U-Haul and take all box after box after box after box. And he was an old farmer. He just sat in the shade of a willow tree and watched us for a while. He introduced himself. He was a nice old farmer. And finally, he says, yeah, he waved to me with his cane. He said, I'm going to head on home now, but come on over here, son. So I walked over. And he said, you got a lot of stuff there, son. You do have lots of stuff you're carrying around there with you. And I go, yeah. It was a hot day in Missouri. He said, son, have you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer behind it? Well, I contemplated on that, and I said, you know what? No, I have never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer to the cemetery. And he said, son, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you. That guy changed my trajectory. That statement and that reflection, that began my divesting. At that point, I said, why am I carrying on this stuff? Why am I doing that? I don't want to be the wealthiest man. I don't want to have the most antiques in the graveyard. It's not my world. Who cares? That guy changed my life and got me thinking of this divesting of everything, literally. And I think it took me about 2 years to totally divest. But today, I can literally fit everything I own in this world in a good-sized van. Maybe 30, 40 feet long, 62 feet high. No, just kidding. I could. I've divested myself of that stuff, and I'm a retired appraiser of fine art and antiques. I'm the auctioneer guy. I had stuff. Oh, I had stuff. Today, that stuff means nothing. It's all gone. All my treasures are gone. I was into treasure. I was a treasure guy. I was an antique roadshow guy. I was the guy that was, wow, look what I got. Great stuff. Today, it means nothing to me. And I think that is because I've changed. Fundamentally, to my core, changed through my spouse's death. Untimely, horrible, ghastly. It changed me. It shook me to the core so thoroughly that I never looked back. So here we are. We're progressing through this parade of life. We are moving forward with our green lights. We are acknowledging that the dead, the deceased, have got their red lights, that they're not hurting. They're not hurting anymore. If they were hurting, like Tom's, like my late wife, she's I don't want to talk about it. Other than they're not hurting. It's just us. We're the walking wounded, or are we? How are we going to get over it? What's a quick? If you had to tell somebody, Jenna, that, hey, take this advice from me. Have you thought about? You've met people, or
yes.
Should we just?
I have thought about that.
Or should we just tell them?
What I've learned is it's really important to live in the present,
Amen.
Not the past and not the future, and to have gratitude. Look at what you still have left when you're going through grieving, and focus on positive instead of drowning in the negative.
Yeah.
And I think finding joy wherever you can, and whatever makes you feel joyful, doing that.
Hallelujah. When you said living in the present moment, I think that is the singular the biggest change in my life. Two things. That of really focusing in on right here, right now. I cannot go back in the past. I can't change a single thing in the past. Mm-mm. I cannot know. I'm not a prognosticator. I don't know what's going to be right around the corner 2 seconds from now. I don't know. So all I really have is that fine line that I put both my hands on called the present. And I try to carry on in that. The other thing for me was slowing down. Just slowing down. Mr. Fast Talking auctioneer guy all his life, fastest talking guy, now talks slowly, methodically, with inflection, sincerity, because I want to enjoy every single moment that I can, and how much we can only enjoy in the present.
You're
only
taking
have
time to smell the roses, as they say.
taking time to smell the roses. That's right. I've driven back and forth. I told you I traveled for 5 years after she died, and I literally just traveled. Just would try to find home. I was trying to find home everywhere I went. I was going. I know the visage of America very, very well. I know the back roads, and I wanted to find, where will I want to settle? Where can I settle? Where should I go that feels like home? And I did. I tried to do that, and every place I'd find that I thought was on my short list, I'd get there, and after about 2 weeks, it would grow old. It was just kind of like, I'm not sure. Now, how this plays into our conversation about grief and grieving, it really doesn't, other than to say that it launched me on a different trajectory. I had to go live my life. I was given the green light, not them. They're stopped. They're done. But they would absolutely tell us, go for it. Go live life. If death can't make you appreciate life and living in the present moment, then what can? I think it's a great, inspiring thing. So in that sense, I am a better person. I'm a better person because of her death. I became more humble. I slowed things down. I took a step back and said, I'm not this great. That's all I know is myself. But at the same time, I'm just me. I'm just another human footprint on this vast, vast cosmic scale which we find ourselves. So here you are, you and I, we're walking on this mortal plane together, right? We're still alive. They're dead. Your spouse, my spouse, they're gone. So we're still alive. So if that's inspiring, if we could just gather up what we have, living this life with those people that we wish to live our life with in the present moment, in a position of enjoying every single moment that we can, I don't think there's any more important message in life. I would
agree with that.
I really don't. I don't think there's anything
Otherwise, you're kind of missing your life.
Yeah.
If you don't do that.
You got almost in a way, actually, her demise made me throw in the towel. I threw in the towel. I said, I give up. That's it. I mean, come on. So I went through the Kubler-Ross stages that we discussed earlier, somewhat, all of those. And I threw in the towel, and then I had nowhere else to go. Her death brought me to a new bottom, the greatest bottom of all.
Yeah.
And that was this, I'm a temporal, mortal person. I'm just here on this earth. I was born to die, period. And life is death, and death is life. The sooner we get that, the sooner we figure that out, I think the better we are as people. I have friends that to this day are 20, 25 years out, and they've mourned that person as if they died yesterday. Am I supposed to criticize them? Absolutely no. It's not my
They
will.
haven't ever accepted.
They cannot accept that, and they're so longing, and they've kind of let that missing take over their lives, and they're marred or tarnish their lives now because they're just walking wounded.
Well, I think it becomes, when you do that, it becomes part of your identity.
Yes. Good point. Good point. I have several friends that are so mired in their depression and their loss that they cannot literally move forward. Wow. This is a deep subject. And I'll stop here for just a minute. We've got about 10 minutes left. I want you to know that that this subject is not something we would want to talk about each and every week, although it's an important one. Like I said earlier, some people are going to say, God, Jacques, that was, what the hell was that? That was the most depressing show I've ever heard. And especially if those people that are listening have never experienced true loss. But again, it could be a parent, it could be a brother, a sister, a sibling, it could be a favorite uncle, it could be a pet. Somewhere, somehow, sometime, and chances are, as we get older, the floodgates could be opened up. 6 months to the day after my late spouse died, I was visiting my brother to unwind. He'd gone through his wife's untimely death 2 years before, so he said, "Come on back. We'll hang out and just come on back east." He lived on the East Coast, and you could hang out and we'll get over this for yourself together. And I'd been there 1 month. It was June. It was hot, muggy. And he walked in the room one morning, and he started slurring his words, and he had a stroke right in front of me. And I caught him. I caught my brother as he lunged forward. And I threw him in the car, took him to the hospital where he suffered a series of many strokes. He also had a sepsis issue. And within 2 weeks, he was dead. So the two, that was a 1-2 punch for me. The 1-2 punch for me was my late spouse and then my brother coming down. Now, some of you have even worse stories. I'm going to say worse because that's pretty tragic. Why is it that we mourn someone like our husband or wives or our spouses or our partners? And yet we can overlook those mass shootings. Again, this is depressing as hell. We talk about this, but what is it? What's the difference there? Those people, they're really going to go through stress. Just think of the parents.
Yeah.
In this world of, there's a doggy out here. There's Ralph coming in with the dogs. Yeah.
Well, they say that losing a child is the highest on the stress scale.
What is that? Losing a child, yes.
Is the highest stress
wow.
that you could have.
I have multiple friends. Actually, if you want to just give me a little glass in there, that would be the best way to do it. Thank you. The loss of friends, loss of a child, you're right, has to be one of the most devastating of all.
Yeah. Because
it's not designed. The bigger picture, the clock of life is designed to be what? You outlive your children.
Right.
I mean, they outlive you, not the other way around. And so when you hear about these tragic situations where there might be a motorcycle accident or something like that, where it's just suddenly, it's just not good. So how and what those people, how they got to deal with their own loss is just amazing. Okay, thank you, Ralph. Ralph has just brought me a little elixir. Uh-oh, what's this? Oh, a Coors Light there. Okay, we're not drinking on the job. Oh, I didn't say Coors Light. Thank you. The doctor will drink this. She likes her. All right, one moment here. Let me take some of my elixir here. Okay. So we're at a point where I think we've talked out death and loss. And it's a point that you that are listening, that have gone through, completely understand. For those of you that have not, if you haven't just turned this depressing show on, I'll turn it off to another station. I want to hear some rock and roll. Then I congratulate you, but I warn you that it is coming. The vast majority of us will go through grief and grieving. Let's wind up this hour by talking about good grief. What is good grief? Do you have any speculation on what it might be? good grief. It's just Charlie Brown. You say good grief. What is good grief?
For me, it's coming out of the dark,
Yeah.
coming out of the darkness, and accepting and finding joy and celebrating life that's left.
Yeah. Right on, Jenna. I wasn't expecting it. It's coming out of the darkness, stepping back into the light of life, and moving forward in the present moment in our own life. Present moment of living right here, right now. And I agree. That was well said. Grief cannot always be bad. Like I mentioned earlier before, there's tears of joy, tears of sorrow. We cry when we laugh so hard. We cry when we are touched by an emotional charged statement, setting, or reading. We are exposed to a plethora of situations in life that are emotionally charged, and those emotionally charged moments express themselves in an emotion of grief, or not grief, but of crying. So when a baby is born, or you've been saved, or you've been you're happy as can be, and you just burst out and laughing and happy. You could give those tears of joy. I'll always remember my mother when she would see me after I would return home from college during the summer. She would meet me at the door and just burst out in tears, welcoming her baby son back into the home. That will always stay with me. Those were tears of joy. Contrast that with the tears of loss. You said earlier that you thought you cried so hard sometimes that you didn't think you could cry anymore?
Right. I cried for so many years that it finally came to the point where I couldn't cry anymore. And I just figured I used all the tears up. And I didn't cry for a long time, for several years. And it hasn't been until recently, in the last few years, that I've started crying again over whatever.
The instance of, as I traveled the States, or I used to, I'm hanging up my traveling shoes for a while, but I travel around and I would enter these country roads and unique little beautiful places where she and I used to have such great memories. Oh, the tears flow.
Yes.
The sight or the smell of a certain perfume will bring tears to my eyes because it reminds me of her. These things are uncontrollable. They're just as human can be. And it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with our dealing with grief and grieving. It's just a part of us, and it's coming your way if it hasn't happened yet. We have just a few more minutes. Anything else? You got a bunch of notes over there.
Well, there's something called the 3 R's of grief.
The 3 R's. Of
recognition, remembering, and rebuilding. And I think that sums it up pretty well. The remembering is what we're doing, and it's also part of the grieving process. And you and I are both in the rebuilding phase, which can last till the end.
Yeah.
We're rebuilding our lives and living forward.
The first one was recognition.
Recognition.
So recognizing what?
That you're grieving and what's happened and what you're in.
You're going to be doing this as a common thing that everybody's going to, so you recognize that you're going to go through this.
Everybody does.
Crap shoot called grief.
So many different things you could grieve about, not just even people. There's
Right.
lots of things to grieve about.
And then the remembrance is the second one.
Mm-hmm. And then rebuilding, which I think is the most important one.
Yeah.
Or
True.
you could call that recreation. Recreation of your life.
Yes.
Which, if you've been completely burnt to the ground, you have to rebuild
You have to.
what's
Correct.
left. You don't have to, but it sure is a lot better than the alternative of
Right.
just staying ash.
True. So you're like the phoenix being arisen from the ashes into a new and illustrious bird. Yeah, I think in the long run that grief in all its myriad of forms is going to be a part of all of our lives. How we, each individual, hangs on to it or doesn't, how we look at it and how we react to it is entirely independent of us. Hopefully, if you are out there and you're listening to this broadcast and you have recently lost someone, I implore that you realize that by your loved one's loss and their red light does not mean you have to carry a red light with you too. You are still given the green pass, the green light of living. So move forward as tentatively or as cautiously or as crazily as you wish, but just play the card of life that is given you, even though they have been dealt their card of death and demise. We are at that point at the end of our show, folks. I wish to thank the universe for guiding me to this station in KFUG. If I can do it, you can too. Get involved in your community radio station. I can't wait to hear your stories, your trials, your interests and passions, cases and needs and services and contributions and over and over again. For this community and beyond. Reach out to me at 541-999-7680, or I'd give you my email, but I don't have time. I want a special thank to Paul, my fellow esteemed colleague, whom I have honored to work with and alongside. Thank you so much, sir. You all tune in next week, and I will have a new subject and probably a good guest or two. Thank you so much, Jenna, for coming on and sharing your insights on this special, wonderful, incredibly complex subject.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I was saying she's carrying a rose right now. How beautiful is that?
That's from Moochie's grave.
Oh, this is. Oh, no kidding. Oh,
Give
you.
that to Doc. It's got
Oh,
two. Put
Doc.
it in her kitchen window.
Oh my
Little
goodness,
flower.
Doc! I got a rose from Ralph.
Yeah, that's from Moochie.
From Moochie. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you so much. Peace and love to everyone out there. Thank you for tuning in to KFUG 101.1 FM. Take care. See you soon.